When I got home, I heard a stranger's voice coming from the basement. Listening closely, I overheard a conversation between my husband and a woman. "Hey, can we spend the night together until late today?" "Yeah. My wife is out until evening, so don't worry. Let's enjoy our time together slowly." My husband was speaking in a smitten tone. Unbeknownst to me, he was having an affair. Rage surged through me, and I was about to storm in, but I calmed myself down. If I confronted them now, I would only catch them in the act. I planned to make them experience hell. My name is Michelle Irving. I am 40 years old and work as an office worker for a stationery manufacturer. I married Ben 5 years ago, and given our ages, we vowed to live together as a childless couple. Since then, we have lived happily together, but recently, we have stopped seeing each other as partners of the opposite gender more than we did when we were newlyweds. In the past, I was embarrassed to show Ben my face without makeup, but after a few years of marriage, I became confident enough to walk around without embarrassment. Ben, too, seemed to get used to it. Initially, he didn't want to appear unkempt and would start exercising as soon as he gained a little weight, but eventually, he stopped caring about his appearance. Now, he has a beer belly with fat over his belt. "You've gained weight recently. Why don't you exercise a bit for your health?" "Huh? Oh, yeah. Sometime." Ben was lying on the sofa, engrossed in his cell phone. He often responded to me absently. I wondered if we would both forget to care for each other and continue to live such decadent lives as we age. Then one day, Ben suddenly became interested in fashion. On his day off, he bought a lot of clothes for himself and posed in front of the mirror, holding a fashion show. Seeing Ben humming and in a good mood, I found it unusual. I asked him because it was strange for him to suddenly become interested in fashion. "You've always said cheap clothes were good enough. What's changed your mind?" Noticing me, Ben folded the clothes he had spread out and answered, "Ah. Just felt like it. I guess I've reached the age where I need to start paying attention to my appearance." After saying that, Ben took the clothes to his room. I felt strangely happy that Ben had taken an interest in fashion. It reminded me of the handsome Ben I knew before we got married. Inspired by Ben, I decided to buy some nice cosmetics and make him fall for me again. Feeling as if we had returned to our honeymoon period, I made dinner a little more luxurious. Ben, noticing my mood and the food, asked happily, "What's the occasion today? Is it some anniversary?" "No, it's not. Seeing you become fashionable reminded me of our honeymoon days, so I went all out." As I chuckled shyly, Ben also smiled happily. "I see. It's been a while since we've had such a luxurious dinner." "I'm happy, let's eat." Ben heartily enjoyed his meal and finished everything. Seeing how much he enjoyed the food made me glad I put in the effort. The next day, when I went to work, a colleague approached me. "Michelle, I saw your husband out and about yesterday, and he seemed to be having a great time." My colleague, James, nudged my arm and said this with a grin. "You saw? He's suddenly become interested in fashion and brought home a ton of clothes yesterday, which surprised me." Hearing this, James's eyes widened in surprise. "Huh? Didn't you go shopping together?" "No, that's not right. I was at home yesterday." I felt the atmosphere turn awkward as I denied it. Then, James shared what he remembered seeing yesterday. "I'm sure I saw someone who looked exactly like you in height, hairstyle, and clothing next to your husband around noon yesterday. But it was inside a store, so it might have been an employee." James mentioned this, thinking it was a misunderstanding on his part. I was a bit panicked, but convinced it must have been a store employee. I couldn't believe Ben would do such a thing. It must have been an employee. Don't say such startling things in the morning. You've completely woken me up now. I brushed it off as a misunderstanding by James and turned it into a joke. We talked until work started, and then a circular notice came around. It was about confirming attendance for the company trip next month. I marked my participation and promised to discuss it further with James. In the evening, after work, I stopped by the supermarket before heading home. When I entered the room, Ben was in the kitchen, rustling through something. He never cooks, even if he comes home early, so I was curious. "I'm home, what are you doing?" Ben, surprised at first, quickly stepped away from the kitchen. "Ah, welcome back. Just looking for some juice because I was thirsty." However, Ben was searching in a spice rack where no cup or juice would be. "That's the spice rack. You know the juice is in the fridge." I handed Ben the juice, amazed he didn't even know where it was, and was astounded by his obliviousness. He just laughed it off and lounged in the living room. I prepared dinner for such a Ben and shared today's events at the company during our meal. By the way, I'll be going on a company trip next month. I'm planning to finish shopping for the trip with James this Saturday. Okay, have fun. Then, I remembered what James had said about seeing Ben. "Oh. By the way, James said he saw you yesterday. He thought you were on a date because he saw someone who looked like me next to you. It was at a clothing store, but it was an employee, right?" I cautiously looked at Ben as I asked. Ben then explained, nodding. "Yeah, that employee was helping me pick out some outfits. I requested clothes that wouldn't look out of place next to you, as she resembled you. I was happy to hear Ben chose them with me in mind. I thought we were past dating and more like a family, but his words made me feel like we could still go on dates like we did when we were newlyweds. I forgot all my worries about Ben and happily finished our meal. The following weeks passed peacefully, and then it was Friday night. I'll be out shopping for the trip with James tomorrow. I'll probably have dinner out, so I might not be back until after 11 p.m. When I told Ben about my plans for the next day, he closed his phone and asked, "Understood, have fun. Where will you be?" I think I'll be at the big department store 3 stations away." "Got it. Don't worry about the time, enjoy yourself. I'll come to pick you up if it gets too late." Ben was considerate even about my return. Recently, Ben had been unusually caring and kind, and I thanked him with a somewhat pleased tone. On Saturday morning, I left early. Before meeting James, I wanted to buy some summer clothes for myself. Shopping for clothes took time for fitting, and I didn't want to inconvenience James, so I went early to choose and buy them alone. I ended up with more bags than expected and still had 2 hours before James would arrive. I tried to find a locker to store my bags, but they were all full. With plenty of time left, I decided to go home to drop off my things. As I walked near my house, I saw a woman wearing a dress from a brand I like. It was a dress I had been contemplating buying. She had a similar hairstyle and body shape to mine, and as I watched her, contemplating whether to buy the dress myself, she stopped right in front of my house. At that moment, I somehow hid behind a utility pole to avoid being seen by her. Sure enough, Ben opened the front door, looked around, and then beckoned the woman inside. Feeling a surge of distrust, I decided against entering through the front door and instead silently slipped in through the kitchen side entrance. Then, I heard Ben and the woman's voices in the living room. "Can we stay together until tonight?" "Yeah. My wife won't be back until around 10 p.m., so we can spend time together until then." Ben was reassuring her that I would not be home until late. "I'm so happy. Last time you had to go back after shopping, and I felt lonely." Sorry. My wife was home that day, and it would have been suspicious if I came back late." I felt a chill run down my spine as I heard Ben respond affectionately to the woman's coquettish voice. I was certain that the person James saw was not a store clerk, but this affair partner. Realizing Ben had been dressing up for this woman made me furious. "Hey, did you make sure to check where the spices are?" I can't make delicious food if you haven't looked. I checked the other day. I'll show you before I forget. Their voices were getting closer. I was supposed to have left the clothes and gone, but fearing getting caught, I took my bags and left the house without making a sound. I barely managed to leave the house in time. I stored the bags in an outdoor shed, then stormed out of the house, filled with frustration and an urge to cry. As I walked, I wondered how long Ben had been cheating on me. Thinking that all the efforts Ben seemed to have made for me were actually for that woman made me dislike the situation even more. My thoughts were clouded with frustration as I met up with James. Even while shopping, I couldn't stop wondering how long the affair had been going on and who the other woman was. Determined to get a confession, I came up with a plan. After finishing dinner with James, I returned home around 10 p.m. It was as if the afternoon's events were a lie. Ben was casually relaxing at home. Welcome back. Did you have fun? It felt like a dream, how naturally Ben acted as if nothing had happened. Yes. It was a lot of fun. I countered his lies with my own. I was determined not to let him get away with it until I could exact a fitting revenge. Of course, while letting him think he was off the hook, I thoroughly gathered evidence such as photos and recordings of phone calls. About 3 weeks passed, and I was about to go on a company trip that weekend. Isn't your company trip coming up soon? When does it start and end? Although Ben seemed concerned, he was probably planning to bring that woman over again. I answered with a feigned worried look. It's from Friday morning to Sunday night. Ben, can you manage meals on your own? Make sure to order takeout or something. Yeah. I'll try to keep the place tidy. I wish you could come back soon, but take your time and enjoy yourself with your coworkers. He was probably inwardly celebrating the chance to spend quality time with his affair partner. I thought it best if he remained unaware, comfortably manipulated by me. Then, on Friday, the day of the company trip arrived. I was scheduled to leave the house at 10 a.m., while Ben would head to work at 8 a.m., meaning I would leave after him. I took advantage of this timing to execute a certain plan. After Ben left, I opened his room and deliberately dropped a bottle of perfume, letting its scent fill the room. Then, I immediately sent an email to Ben. While cleaning Ben's room, I accidentally dropped a bottle of perfume and sent him an email saying I would like him to sleep in the basement from today until Sunday because of the mess. Ben's room has a lock on the inside, but the basement locks from the outside. I utilized this locking mechanism to my advantage. Ben had emailed back saying he would use the basement, so my plan was proceeding smoothly. Seeing Ben's email, I headed off to the company trip. Throughout the trip, I was distracted, filled with thoughts about Ben and his affair, unable to fully enjoy myself. Hey, Michelle, you look pale and you're sweating a lot. I'll talk to the boss so you can take a break. James noticed my condition and expressed concern. Sorry. I think I'm not feeling well, so I'm going to head back early. Don't worry about it. I saw the boss walking this way. I'll go call him over. James ran off to fetch the boss, who then showed concern for my condition, suggesting I either return to the hotel or have my husband pick me up. Since having Ben pick me up would ruin my plan, I opted to go back to the hotel and leave for home early the next morning. I had told Ben I would return Sunday night, but coming back Saturday morning would be unexpected for him. The thought of catching him off guard was thrilling. In the morning, I apologized to James and our boss and decided to head home early. After changing trains, I arrived at the nearest station to my house at 9 a.m., hoping Ben and his affair partner were still asleep as I hurried home. Approaching my house, my hands were sweating unusually much for just opening my own door. With a heightened sense of tension and my heart rate increasing, I was about to silently lock them in the basement when I heard a voice. Ben, wake up. It's already 9 a.m. I'm getting hungry, let's have breakfast. The affair partner had woken up. Startled by her voice, I accidentally made a noise with my luggage. Despite being flustered and sweating, I quickly switched to a new plan. I'm home. I let Ben know I had returned, and there was silence from them, likely panicking since they hadn't expected me back so soon. I made my presence known by making noise in the living room and putting away my travel items, assuming they were stuck in a situation where they couldn't come out. Then, I loudly pondered. Is Ben out? Pretending to look for him. Maybe he's sleeping in the basement. Approaching the basement, I heard faint sounds of them looking for a hiding spot and couldn't help but smirk. Then, I opened the basement door with force. No one's here. Maybe he went out. I closed the basement door sharply and naturally locked it, likely without them realizing the significance of being locked in. Surely, the two of them felt a greater sense of relief for having been able to hide safely and had not yet realized the seriousness of being locked in. Turning on the TV and increasing the volume, the weather forecast announced a hot and humid day. I turned on the air conditioning in the living room to stay comfortable, knowing the basement, being almost a storage area, lacked air conditioning or a fan, making me wonder how long they could endure. An hour passed, and it seemed Ben and the woman were still waiting for a chance to come out, enduring the situation. I looked outside the window. The sun was shining, and it was intensely hot. I vowed not to give Ben and his companion any chance by staying inside no matter what. While comfortably watching TV and snacking, another hour passed. Then, seemingly at his limit, Ben's voice could be heard. Hey! Open up. With a sigh, I headed towards the basement. Upon unlocking it, a stifling wave of air rushed out from the basement. It's hot. Give me some water. Sweaty and exhausted, Ben staggered towards the living room. I glanced into the basement but saw no sign of the woman. She was either still hiding or had left. After gulping down water, Ben angrily confronted me. You told me to use the basement, so why did you lock it? Someone could have been inside. Ben showered me with angry words. I apologized sincerely, but with a hint of provocation in my tone. I'm sorry. But when I checked the room, there was no one there. Where were you? Unable to admit he and the woman had been hiding in the closet, Ben mumbled and deflected loudly. That doesn't matter. It's so hot. Saying this, Ben grabbed a bottle of water and headed back to the basement. It was clear he was going to give water to the hiding woman. 5 minutes later, Ben returned and demanded. It's too hot. I feel like I'm going to pass out. Go buy some ice cream now. Ben pointed at me, speaking down to me. There's ice cream in the fridge. I had anticipated Ben's shallow tactics and prepared accordingly. Today, let's have pasta. We probably don't have the ingredients, right? Go to the supermarket now. What a coincidence, I was planning to make pasta today. We have all the ingredients, so no need to go shopping. Ben was desperately trying to get me out of the house. I was struggling to hold back laughter at his frantic plotting. Fearing he might say something I hadn't anticipated, I took a bold step. Your room should be free from the perfume smell now, so you don't need to use the basement anymore. Maybe I should clean the basement? As I moved to go to the basement, Ben hurriedly stopped me. I'll clean it, no need. You've never cleaned before. Despite my words, Ben was adamant about stopping me. I'm in the mood to clean. Leave it to me. After forcibly taking the cleaning supplies, I gave Ben a stern look and said, Then clean your own room first. You've never even cleaned your own room before. Start with that instead of the basement. Caught off guard by my words, Ben momentarily faltered. Seizing the opportunity, I rushed down to the basement and opened the door. There, the woman was sitting in the middle of the room, having apparently left the closet due to the heat. Her face turned pale as our eyes met. Who are you? Of course, I knew she was the affair partner, but I pretended not to know and acted accordingly. Thinking they had a chance, Ben and the woman lied to me. This person is a supervisor from my company. I forgot to bring some important documents home, and she kindly delivered them. Yes, that's correct. I'm your husband's supervisor. Ben seemed to think he had cleverly come up with a quick lie on the spot. The woman, too, was stumbling over her words, trying desperately to stick to their fabricated story. It was so poorly executed that I almost laughed. Really? Your supervisor came to deliver something on a holiday morning? Normally, you would go and pick it up yourself, wouldn't you? As I said this, Ben started sweating profusely. I pressed him further. Moreover, if it was just a delivery, there's no need to enter the room, right? Even if you were offering tea as a thanks, you'd invite them into the living room, wouldn't you? It's odd to bring a supervisor into a room without air conditioning. Ben seemed to regret the lie he had spun in haste. But it was too late for regrets. The woman just sat there, face pale, looking down, silent. Since both Ben and the woman remained quiet, I took the opportunity to confront them directly. You're not his supervisor, you're his affair partner, aren't you? At this, Ben flinched noticeably, as if affirming my statement. I'm sorry for lying. But I swear, this is the first time I've ever done something like this. Please believe that. Ben apologized profusely, bowing deeply. The woman nodded along with Ben, trying to show her agreement. I wasn't about to be fooled by such a shallow excuse. So, the woman who came to our house before was someone else? At my question, Ben reacted loudly and nervously. Did you think you could deceive me? I have evidence of you bringing her into our house multiple times and making phone calls. Both of you will have to pay a settlement. Saying this, I handed Ben the divorce papers I had prepared in advance. The word settlement turned the woman pale. Please. It was Ben who pursued me insistently, and I couldn't refuse. So, half of the settlement should be claimed from Ben. She was clearly trying to reduce her financial burden. Before I could respond, Ben retorted angrily. What? You were the one who came on to me, saying you were better than my current wife. Stop playing the victim. As Ben raised his voice, the woman fought back just as fiercely. I am the victim. You made me change my hairstyle and wear clothes similar to your wife's to avoid getting caught by her or the neighbors. You're selfish. The woman's emotions were raw and loud. I stopped their argument with a single statement. The biggest victim here is me. That silenced their bickering instantly. I then took the woman's contact information and address and asked her to leave for the day. The woman maintained her victim stance till the very end. Once Ben and I were alone, he awkwardly avoided eye contact. Could you please fill out the divorce papers and leave as soon as possible? You'll also be receiving a demand for the settlement from a lawyer later. Despite his reluctance, I pressed on. If you don't write it quickly, I'll add on to the settlement just like that woman suggested. With that, Ben hastily complied. Afterward, he packed his minimal belongings and left, likely heading to his parents' home. Anticipating this, I had already called his parents. I'm sorry to call out of the blue, Father. May I have a moment of your time? After explaining Ben's infidelity as the reason for our divorce, his parents were furious. They apologized to me and promised to kick Ben out if he tried to return. Ben had acted exactly as I predicted, even attempting to stay with his parents under a pretense. I'm home. Yeah, we're remodeling the house a bit. Michelle went back to her parents' place, so let me stay here too. However, his parents had been forewarned by me and, after lecturing him, kicked him out. Ben likely ended up staying in hotels, eventually running out of money. Imagining Ben living a constrained life filled with speculation and embarrassment brought me to laughter. The thought of Ben leading a painful life amused me. A few days after sending a demand for settlement through a lawyer to the affair partner, the woman came to my house. Behind her stood two people who appeared to be her parents. From what I gathered, the woman was not employed and found herself unable to pay the demanded settlement, so she had turned to her parents for help. Her parents, feeling deeply sorry, wanted to apologize in person. Watching the three of them kneeling in front of my house was quite a spectacle. To the woman, I stated firmly, "You must pay back the settlement with the money you earn yourself, even if it takes years. Don't rely on your parents at all." The woman, who had been fully prepared to lean on her parents, looked at me with tearful, fearful eyes. Despite her distress, I felt no sympathy. She had brought this on herself. Eventually, both Ben and the woman made the settlement payment. I sold our house and moved into an apartment suitable for living alone. Having never lived alone before, I was initially anxious, but I found the experience comfortable. I didn't want to give up on love because of this ordeal, so I decided to start searching for new relationships. While I still felt anxious about falling in love again, I believed that a new romance would help me completely forget about my ex-husband. I was determined to live a life free of regret.